Okay, everybody, I want to spend some time talking about built-in functions. So first we need to describe what a built-in function is. So what we're discussing here is the fact that in Python, every data type, well, almost every data type, has the concept of built-in functions. Now, functions are not necessarily commands. They may be compiled of code that allows me to be able to do specific things. So as an example, when in Python, if I have a function, let's say I want to have a value in here, my function is min. Now, this is the operator, but it's technically a function. But the object is what I do is inside of parentheses, what I can do is I can actually cite the operand that I want to do the operation against. So in this instance, if I came in here and said 1, 2, 3, and then we actually close the parentheses, what this function does is it's going to identify the numeric integer that actually has the minimum value. Other options might be things like round. So if I choose to, I could use round, and then what I can do is I can specify the value, and I could say a variable. So I want to round A. So as an example, let's say we had 1, 3, 0, 5 as my value. Now when I do a round operation, what I do is I do a comma, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, I want to round out to the digit specified to the right of the decimal point. So if I come over here and say 2, what's going to end up happening is the system is going to look at this and it's going to represent a number of 1, 3, 5 is going to be a round to 1, so anything that's 5 or higher will be rounded to 1. So what that should do is translate that number to 1.35. We have other options that we can do, and like I said, every data type, at least every data type that we're going to talk about in the confines of this video on demand series and in the class will have built-in functions that allow us to be able to do things. Now, another built-in function might be sum. So if I come in here and I execute a sum, and I say that I want 1, 2, and 3, in this instance, what it's going to do is it's actually going to add those numbers up. So it's going to come back with a value of 6. So looking at the way things come together, let's look at the built-in functions that I want you guys to know in the context of this class. And again, it's going to be in that variables.py file under arithmetic built-in functions. So we see here that we have a number of them. As an example, we have the ones that let me go ahead and get rid of my mail here so we're not getting pelted with all kinds of requests. 1 second. So in this situation, what we have is we have these values. So as an example, I say, let's come up here and say sum. So like I said, if I do sum, and in the configuration, it's a list of numbers, so I should have incorporated that in the screen. My apologies. In fact, I'll write that in right now off camera so that when we come back, you can actually see the right values. But sum, and then what I'll do is I'll specify that value of 1, 2, 3, close the bracket, and the parenthesis, and we see that it did actually add up to 6. What about min? If I come in and I say min, 1, 2, and 3, obviously 1 is going to be the lowest value. Now this idea of rounding. So what I want to do is I want to come up with a value that is going to let me be able to generate a longer decimal value so that we can actually do some rounding, and I want to have something in there that's going to allow me to round up. So if I come in here and say A is going to be 3 divided by 1.25, and then print the value of A, that's 4, so let's say 175. A, there we go, we got some nice values in here now. So in this context right now, this is the number that I'm working with, and if I wanted to round, I would say round, specify the variable, and come out to a specific set of digits. So in this instance, what I'm going to do is I'm going to round to 2 digits past the decimal point. Now looking at this, 4 is less than 5. Therefore, this should produce a value of 171. Now if we look over here, this guy right here is an 8. So that's going to be in the 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I round out to 4 digits, and we take a look at this, this should translate to 1.7143. Let's see if that is indeed the case. 1.7143. Powers, obviously, I could come in here and execute. Powers would be, say, for instance, 2 to the 8th, which should give me 256. If I say power, and let's say 2 to the 128, that's going to produce a huge number, which is going to be 3.4 undecillion values. So that's going to basically be the total number of IPv6 addresses that exist in the entire universal address space. So we can see here that these operations are mostly mathematical. That's why we call them mathematical built-in functions. And it, like I said, needs to be mentioned that every data type that we're going to talk about is going to have built-in functions. Now, obviously, if I have a string, I'm not going to have arithmetic features built into the data type because they're letters. So, or strings of ASCII characters, basically, is the best way to put it. So, alphanumeric in nature. So, when we start looking at things, built-ins are really, really important, because maybe not so much as it relates to integers and floats and numbers and just basic mathematics, because we always have the mathematical functions like a times 3. However, keep in mind that this is a more streamlined mechanism for being able to implement mathematical operations, or what we call arithmetic operations. So again, I just want you guys to be familiar with these and know that they exist. But also know that as we discuss other data types, when we start looking at lists, when we start looking at strings and things along those lines, there are going to be some very, very special and very, very useful built-in functions that we get right out of the gate when we employ Python in our operational environments. And they will serve a number of purposes, especially when it comes to actually manipulating network devices. All right, so with that being said, I'm Terry Vincent, and what we're going to do is we're going to pick up in the next video where we're going to actually, let me see what we're going to talk about here. I'll just scroll down. It should be comparisons and identity operators. So I'll see you guys in that video.